I gotta be honest, I don't even know what the point is of me being up here now. Right? That was probably the best Christmas story ever. I'm just gonna be honest, I can't top that. So we could just go ahead and wrap this up if we wanted to, but I guess I'll go ahead and continue on anyway. Like I said, my name's Dan, and I'm so glad that you're here with us. This is one of my favorite services we do all year. This is one of my favorite times. It brings back so many memories as a child going to candlelight services with my family, going with my grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles. Only then, when I was a child, did anybody have this? They had like really late, almost like midnight candlelight services, really late. Did anyone go to those? Just as a pastor, I just want to say that's a horrible idea that we would never do. So we do ours conveniently at 4 to allow you all to get back at a decent hour and to get, I'd say to get a little bit of sleep, but we know that's probably not going to happen as your kids are going to wake up early. But hey, we're just so glad you're here. Whether you're here with a family or you came on your own, we want to just say welcome to our family. Welcome to Eikon Church. We're so glad that you're here with us today as we can reflect and think about the meaning of Christmas. And what I'm going to do over the next few moments is I'm going to read just a few verses, some verses that stand out to me, some things that I'm reminded of this time of year. And I've got some special helpers that are going to help me with some of these verses. But the first one that I want to focus on is one of my favorite verses when it comes to Christmas and the Christmas story and the Christmas message. About the life of Jesus, about the birth of Jesus, his coming here to earth, but it's actually a verse not found in the Gospels. It's not found in this telling of Jesus's life. In fact, it wasn't written by the early church or by one of Jesus's friends, but it was written 750 years before Jesus ever showed up. And I think it so beautifully illustrates who Jesus is. It so beautifully illustrates the heart of God and what I believe the heart of God is for every single one of us today. So for this first verse, could I go ahead and have my first volunteer go ahead and come on up here? Listen, I could read the verses, but let's be honest, they're a lot cuter than me and they can probably read better. So let's listen in to this first verse. Go ahead. Wow, good job, good job. You can go ahead and find your way back to your seat. The verse was on the screen in case you were trying to listen through that ring. But it's this verse. For unto us a child is born, a son is given. I'll give you a sign. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and we will call him Emmanuel. This idea, this verse, this passage was spoken by a prophet by the name of Isaiah. And you see, the original context of when he was writing this is he was speaking to a king. And he was giving this prophecy in that day and age, 750 years before the birth of Jesus, speaking to a king by the name of Ahaz. See, what was going on is it was a very dark time for King Ahaz and for that kingdom. It seemed like there was no hope. There were armies mounting against him. And this prophet Isaiah said, hey, listen, I want you to know something. A young woman is going to give birth to a child, possibly King Ahaz's wife. And later on, we read that basically before that child is able to eat solid foods, the fear of invasion will be gone. He calls it a prophecy, this promise, a promise that would be as low as the depths of Sheol and to the heights of heaven. And what we find out is that very thing happened. That within the next couple of years, both of those invading armies went back and King Ahaz celebrated. He knew that he was safe. It was this message that God is for him. And that's a good message, right? It's good to remember that God is for us. That's important because sometimes there's dark times that we find ourselves in. And to remember that God is for us is important. But when you think about it, I don't know if it's a kind of promise that goes to the depths of Sheol and to the heights of heaven, right? Because sometimes it just feels overwhelming. There's another prophecy that Isaiah gave to that same king. And I want to read this because this is what all the people of that day expected. So for the second verse, could I go ahead and have my volunteer go ahead and come up on stage and read this verse for us?
For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will stand on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty Lord, the Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. Isaiah 9:6.
Awesome. Great job, Addie. See, to King Ahaz, that's what he pictured. He pictured a modern kind of ruling king. That how God would be for him is that he would raise up this new king that would defeat all the armies around him. And the people of that day, these Hebrew people, these Jewish people, that's what they all expected. They all prayed for a Messiah, a king that would be for them, a king that would fight for them, that would go before them. That's what they hoped for. And that's what this first meaning of this passage meant to those people, and that's what they looked for. And that's what the people during Jesus' lifetime were still looking for. A king that would throw off the Roman government that was oppressing them. That's the kind of king that they were looking for, and they almost missed it. Because the king that showed up was a king of a different order, was a better king than they ever could have imagined or dreamed for. And I want you to hear a little bit about that king in our third verse. So go ahead and come on up, Desi, and read this last verse for us.
While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloth and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them.
Awesome job. Great job, Desi.
Luke 2:67.
Good job. Great job. You see, the king that showed up didn't show up in some royal palace. He showed up in one of the most unexpected places to one of the most unexpected families. This king born in a manger. And it wasn't until years later that these early followers of this new kind of king looked back at the prophecies of Isaiah. And they said, we thought we knew what this meant. We thought we had the answer because for King Ahaz, God showed up and was for him. But when they read that through the light of Christ, when they read those ancient prophecies in light of who Jesus was, they discovered a new meaning. They discovered this meaning that God would send his son and that they would call him Emmanuel. And Emmanuel doesn't mean God's for us. Emmanuel means God is with us. That Jesus didn't show up in some place that we can't relate to, some palace on some beach, but he showed up in the most average of places. And the high and the mighty, they missed it at that time, but it was the shepherds. It was the common people that got to see the Christ. It was people like you and me, just kind of average people. These were kind of blue-collar workers that were probably watching sheep for some wealthy person. They just showed up, and because they were willing to be present, they got to see the light of the world enter into a dark place. And we realize that sometimes in our world, it can feel dark, right? And sometimes we can all go through difficult seasons, difficult times, and it's great to know that you've got a God that's for you. Well, the Christmas message is you have a God that's better than that. See, that's a great promise, but it's not one that goes to the depths of Sheol or to the heights of heaven. A promise like that is a promise of Emmanuel, that God is with you wherever you find yourself. See, for the people of that day, they lived under the boot of the Roman Empire. They were oppressed. They were crying out, and it was incredibly dark. And on that first Christmas, God showed up, became the light of the world. And to reflect on this, we're going to do something. If you could all get out your candle that you were given. When you came into service, you were given a candle. Kids, you may have chosen to grab a glow stick. It's safer and insurance prefers it. But here's what we're going to do. The host team's going to begin to come down right now, and they're going to light these candles. And what we're going to notice is, as the lights in this room are dim, that it will start with a little light here or there. And as you pass your light down, the light will begin to grow. And that's what happened 2,000 years ago. It's that the light of Jesus showed up in a dark place on the backside of some desert to a traveling family. His name was Jesus. And they called him Emmanuel. God is with us. And wherever you find yourself this Christmas, maybe it's an incredible time. Maybe things are going fantastic. I want you to know that God's with you. He's rejoicing with you. When you wake up tomorrow morning or you go about your holiday festivities, you can remember that God is with you. But maybe, for some of you, it's a difficult time. And you want to know more than just God is for you. You need to be reminded that God is with you too. That God can show up even in the darkest of places. That Emmanuel means God with us. So I have a prayer for all of us. A challenge for every single one of us. Is that we do the very thing that God did for us. See, what Jesus did is he went around and he made disciples. A disciple is just someone that's trying to be like Jesus. And then he said, now go into all the world and make disciples, so that we're supposed to the best of our abilities, become like Christ and to help others in that journey too. So what that means is sometimes we show up for people, that we are with people. That just like God sent his son into the muck and the mire of this world, that we show up in other people's lives. When they're having the best of times, when they're having the hardest of times, may we be a people, may we be a church that show up for our friends, our families, our neighbors, our loved ones. May we be a church that's not just for people. May we be a church that will be with people as we reflect the fact that that's what God did for every single one of us. So here's what we're going to do. With that in mind, as we reflect upon those ideas, we're going to sing 2 final songs. We're going to allow the candles to remain lit during these songs so that we can look around and reflect on what happens when we show up in each other's lives, when we're with people, not just for them. As we watch the light in this room, may we be reminded of what we're supposed to be in our world, bearers of the light. And parents, just be mindful if kids have candles and they're lit for a while. Again, insurance would just ask you to be mindful of that. And then at the end of service, Kelly will come back up to dismiss us, to guide us in blowing out our candles and dismissing us for the evening. So let me do this. As I close out my time, let me pray for all of us. Let's pray.